State Planning and Community Affairs Committee, and before we get started, I'll ask Representative Mac Jackson if he would open us in a prayer.
Chairman, Father, as we come before you, we thank you for this day, Lord. We ask your leadership, your guidance, your direction. Bless this chairman of this committee, Lord, and bless this committee as we do the business of the state of Georgia with only your wisdom, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. If we don't have any objections, Senator Hill is not able to come and present right now because he's in the well, to my understanding, and he was first on the agenda. So we'll go ahead and start with Senate Resolution 735. And if anybody here wants to sign up for or against to speak on the bill, I've got the sign-up sheet. Otherwise, who will be presenting that bill? Okay. Senator? Senator Beach. Oh, by the way, we got a new member, and we'd like to welcome Representative Moore to our committee. This is his first committee meeting, and so y'all have any questions, wear him out.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to come before you.
Are you on? Let's see. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to come before you to present Senate Resolution 735. Let me tell you how all this came about. Last year, at the end of session, we asked for a study committee on transit. I firmly believe that if we're ever going to be a world-class region, we cannot have a fragmented transit system that doesn't coordinate, cooperate, or talk to each other. So we decided to have a study committee, and we had 2 Democrats and 3 Republicans on it. And what we did, we looked at Greta, MARTA, Cobb, and Gwinnett Transit. Looked at those agencies in the 4 big counties. And what we did, we took a trip from Kennesaw State to Gwinnett, and I had someone film it for us from North Georgia. And what we found out, one, we went 32 miles, and it took us 4 hours to do it, number one. But I will tell you, when you looked at Gwinnett's system, and you looked at Cobb's system, and you looked at MARTA, they were all very friendly, very clean, safe, did a great job. But what happened is when you cross jurisdictional lines, there's no coordination. You may wait 30 minutes at MARTA. There's no coordination. The other thing that we found out is when we took this trip, to plan our trip, we had to go to 3 different websites. You had to go to CCT website, find out their schedules. You had to go to the MARTA website, and then you had to go to the Gwinnett website. The other thing you had to do, you had to pay with 3 different methods of payment. So when we did this, it really opened our eyes. And one of the things we wanted to do, and as y'all may know, I used to serve on the DOT board, and I served on the Regional Transit Committee. And all we talked about at the Regional Transit Committee was who was going to be on the board, who was going to disperse federal funds, who was going to appoint the board. But we really never looked at it from the rider standpoint. And what I wanted to do was make sure we were looking at it from the rider standpoint. What can we do to make that better for that rider? That rider that gets on at Kennesaw State and goes to the 191 building to go to work, he doesn't care who's on the board. He doesn't care, who appoints the board. He wants to know, he or she wants to know that they can get on a transit system and get to their job in an efficient, safe manner. So what we've done is we've decided to, what came out of our study committee was an urging resolution, and it passed through the Senate. I think it was 55-0, if I'm not mistaken. It was 52. It was unanimous. And just urging these agencies to come together to form a unified website called www.goatltransit.com, goatltransit.com, so that the consumer can go to one website and plan a trip within those 4 entities, Greta, Cobb, Gwinnett, or MARTA. And the good news is UPS has lent us a couple executives to help out because we didn't want to cost anything to the taxpayers, and there was really no funding for this. So I went to the president of UPS, and he's agreed to loan a couple executives to help, and then Greta's leading it. They're the coordinating agency. I see Matt Markham is here. And they are coordinating the facilitation of this new website, and they're working on it now, and hopefully it'll be ready in July for a first look. Now ARC is also helping because ARC's already been working on something through a federal grant, so we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We just want to make it better for the consumer, and that's the whole purpose of this resolution is, and we didn't want to do legislation. And I will tell you this, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee, in my years in transportation, I have never seen a spirit of cooperation between MARTA, Greta, Cobb, Gwinnett, and the agencies. They want to make it right. They want to do it. Just somebody needs to corral them, get them around a table, and say, let's get it done. So when there's the political will, I think we will get it done. And I think the end goal is to have one regional transit agency instead of just all these fragmented systems. And that's why we went with the name ATL, because we would eventually like to see the Atlanta Transit Line and rebrand everybody into the ATL. So you'd fly into ATL, you'd get on an ATL train, ATL bus, ATL express bus. Because right now, when you go downtown today at 5 o'clock, you'll see a MARTA bus, a Greta bus, a Cobb CCT bus, a Gwinnett bus. I live here, and I wouldn't know which one to get on. So we need to make it seamless and less confusing. And again, I really believe this. If we make it where it has connectivity, gets you where you want to go in a seamless and, most importantly, safe manner, our transit ridership will go up. So that's why we're doing this, and that's the whole purpose of this urging resolution. And again, like I said, Mr. Chairman, I am just really proud of the cooperation that these agencies have come together, all the agency heads. So I'll answer any questions.
Well, thank you for bringing the bill, and it sounds like it's got a lot of merit to it. What kind of time frame do you see this being before it could be implemented? I know it's just a resolution, but the people you've talked to, even UPS, is that something that they've indicated to you?
Well, and I've talked to Mr. Markham, and we think in July of this year, we should have something to look at to see if it works, and then before we go live, we want to make sure we dot the I's and cross the T's so that it all it's a great website and a great system, and it coordinates. But that's the goal, is July. That was in the resolution, is to try to have it done by July 1st of 2014.
Seems like that may be using the same. May have some obstacles, I guess, when it comes to the pavements and the same pavements and things like that. But I think it's a great idea. We have several questions up here. We'll start with who's number 12. Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Senator. Just out of curiosity, has there been any forethought about the long-term administration of the website? Who would be responsible for funding it?
Greta, because they're the state agency that I talked to the governor about it, and he has some input there. We have no input at MARTA. We have no input at Cobb or Gwinnett, but we do have input from a state level standpoint at Greta.
So from their IT perspective, do they have the staff and resources available to implement now and then manage it moving forward?
They tell me they do. Now, they have a new executive director. They're in the interim executive director. Janine Miller recently left, but she assured me that they could handle it, and they wanted to be the entity that coordinated it.
So when you talk about coordination, are there plans for them to begin trying to synchronize schedules so that we can cut down on that time?
I mean, I think that's the end goal, and that's why we have everybody around the table, MARTA, Cobb, Gwinnett, and Greta.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have our Vice Chairman, Representative Rogers. I'm trying to cut off 12. Let me see if I can do this. Go ahead, I think. Okay, now we got it.
First of all, you got me?
Yep.
I apologize. I was a little bit late, and you may have covered this. Are we in sort of a unique situation in the Metro Atlanta area with so many different types of entities? Are there other cities that are in a similar position as what we are? And have you guys, if so, have you had an opportunity to look at what they're doing?
We did look at Chicago and Denver, who were very fragmented at one time and have come together. But when you look at Dallas, for example, or San Francisco or Washington, D.C., I mean, in the Washington, D.C. area, they're going to different states, not just different counties.
Right.
They're going to Virginia and Maryland and so on. So so we did look at that, and we do think that there's a lot of merit in having one regional system. And so that's why we're doing this, so it's not a fragmented system.
Okay, so there are others that are in the same sort of situation, and you can use those as models. And you mentioned D.C., which to me is a phenomenal system.
Right.
It does a great job. That and London, I guess, are probably the two best. But just wanted to see how we compared maybe with others.
Yes. And I will say this also, Mr. Vice Chairman. I guess it was about 12 years ago, I was on city council in Alpharetta. And if I would have mentioned bringing MARTA up to Alpharetta, I'd have been thrown out of office. You fast forward to today, people want transit. They want transit options. They're actually telling us they want the opportunity to have MARTA come up to North Fulton. So, and I think that's true in Gwinnett and Cobb. I mean, they really realize, especially when you had the announcement of the Braves Stadium, one of the first things was, are we going to be able to transit to the new baseball stadium? So I think there's a whole different attitude towards transit in the region than there was a few years back.
Well, and I think also one of the things that, Atlanta, ever since the Olympics, has positioned themselves as an international city.
Correct.
And, we've relied heavily on tourism and things of this nature. So it's not just the people that are living here, it's people that are coming in to make it easier. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you to our Vice Chairman. And we have a question from our new representative, Sam Moore.
Are you familiar with Google Go Transit?
I am not.
Okay. I've only learned about this in the past probably 8 hours or so. I know very little about it myself, but it appears to do a lot of what the web page would possibly do. It coordinates schedules between different participating municipalities as far as transit schedules and such things. So I'm not intimate with it. That's about all I know. I was trying to go on it before. I wasn't taking a phone call from my wife or anything. But that's something that sounds like is already covered, and something that possibly we could simply just participate in that program and it'd be done for us free of charge.
Okay. Well, thank you. I have not heard of that.
Thank you. That may be a good idea, something to look into,
We
since
will.
this is obviously a resolution.
Yes.
I'm sure they'll be looking for every way they can do it in the most effective and least expensive. And have a question from Representative Chuck Sims.
Hey, Senator Beach.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing the resolution. As you know, this is urging resolution and doesn't have any force of law. You are aware of that. And
Correct.
So they don't have to do anything. Have you thought about having a study committee to try to force a little bit of hand? I mean, I know you don't want to be too forceful in that matter, but if you're going to do something, usually these things, end up on a shelf somewhere, and they don't really matter too much. In the past, I've found that they're not very. They urge real good, but they don't do much.
Well, I will tell you, when I first went to legislative council on this, I was looking at maybe should we do the legislative process, and then I just realized, look, they're working together. We had everybody around the table at our first meeting, MARTA, Greta, Cobb, Gwinnett, ARC, and I just saw the spirit of cooperation, and I knew these people from when I was at GDOT. I know they want to do what's best for the rider and the consumer. So I said, let's do urging resolution. And then if not, I'll come back next year. And now that I'm unopposed, I am coming back next year. So I'll come back next year with the hammer, and we'll make them do it. But I don't think we have to make them do it. I mean, you've got the representatives from all these agencies here, and they are wanting to do things to make transit ridership better.
I understand. I'm not trying to make a hammer. I'm just saying that so that you get people, because I'll be honest, I'm from South Georgia, and, on the bus we have school bus. I mean, there's no, big transportation issues down where I live. So someone, from a rural area is not going to help you in that area. It's just going to be basically, this is an urban issue, but you've probably got folks in Savannah, folks in Macon, folks in Richmond County, folks in Columbus, Muskogee, Bibb also, all with transit authorities that probably have some of the same problems. It might not hurt just to have, if you want, I would just suggest that you do a study committee with the folks from those regions. Have those folks there, because I think it'd be a lot better for you. Whatever is good for Atlanta may not be good for everybody else, but it might give ideas to other folks.
And I agree with you, and I know there's other transit entities, and they all need to be taking advantage of technology, whether it's Google or, we ought to be able to get on this and find out a schedule. And that's where we want to get to. So
thank you for bringing the resolution now.
All right, thank you.
And now we have Representative Simone Bell.
I can't wait, Mr.
All
Okay.
right. Then Representative Dewey McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Senator for bringing this resolution. I guess since you did it as a rider, I want to do it as a rider too, so I don't want it to be cost effective for me as a rider. So I don't think that, have we thought about the cost of a ridership to transfer any of these, the costs? That's what I'm looking at. I don't want to be paying $3 for what I'm doing now, and then, after you do all this, now it's $7.
Right.
And now I won't be able to ride.
Well, I will tell you, we didn't look at expanding any rail lines. We didn't look at expanding any services. All we looked at was making it consumer friendly on one website so that you could know how you could get from point A to point B, and hopefully they would coordinate their schedules. So we're not looking to add any costs, so it shouldn't change any of the rates. So I would just say to you, that's what we looked at. And I just think to go 32 miles to take 4 hours, I could have flown to Phoenix faster. So, I mean, we got to do better, and we're capable of doing better in a cost-effective way. I'm not trying to make, if anything, I'd like to see cost reductions with volume going up. If volume goes up, then that can help with the cost. So,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I had no idea we'd have so many questions, but this is a good discussion. So now we have Representative, let's see who was next on the list. I believe it was Representative Dukes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I really want to thank you for bringing this bill, because essentially that's where I think the direction of moving people in Atlanta, in the metro area, is going to reside in these systems. We simply cannot build enough roads for it because the cost to acquire the right-of-way is too expensive. Not to mention that we have 12 lanes going through Atlanta now, we still can't move people. So
Correct.
This certainly is the direction that we need to go, and I definitely want to thank you for that. And you are right. We have some very good people who are working in these transit authorities that are committed to making the systems work. And Mr. Chairman, at the proper time, I'd like to be recognized for a motion so the senator can go.
Well, thank you. I would just say this. Thank you for those comments, Representative. But I would also say that, I don't know if you read recently, State Farm decided to relocate a regional headquarters with 8,000 new jobs. And over like a 10-year period, it's going to be close to 20,000 jobs. They're going to have mega regions in Phoenix, Dallas, and Atlanta. They chose that site because it was on transit. There was a MARTA station directly across the street. So they knew that to move people in the future, to your point, transit's going to play a part in it. So that was a big decision. It was in the paper that transit was a big factor in their decision of where they located.
Thanks, Senator. We have one more.
Okay.
Representative Mac Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this resolution too. When I came back in the session this year, I heard of Uber here in Atlanta, and I understand it makes taxi cabin easier in Atlanta. Now, am I to understand that what we have now is multiple websites in order to plan a trip, that
Correct.
a person has to go to multiple websites?
Correct.
And what this urgent resolution would do was create one website to eliminate all the other websites?
Well, I think they'll still keep their website for MARTA so they can, have their projects that they're going to announce and so on. But this would be if you're a rider, you could go to this website, and if you're trying to get from Marietta to downtown Atlanta, you could see how you get there and one easy way, and when the coordinating of the schedules. You wouldn't have to go to CCT and then MARTA, because that's what I had to do. I had to go to CCT, MARTA, and Gwinnett to kind of figure out what bus to get on and to get to the train and where I transferred and so on. This would be one website that would have all that information. But I believe they would still have their own websites for their other purposes.
Thank you. Maybe I will get a chance to see the Braves in the future.
All right. Well, good. Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Is that all the questions?
That's all the questions, but I would
Okay.
ask you that anytime you're doing anything that involves MARTA, that
Yes.
you talk to our expert from the House, our representative sitting right here, Representative Jacobs. And
We had lunch,
Okay.
and
All
we've
right.
talked,
Very
and we've
good.
had lunch, and
Very good.
I think he's going to carry this for me over here. So,
Right.
no, we have a great Did you buy lunch? Yeah, we went Dutch. We didn't want to. No ethics. Yeah, no, he didn't buy, but I didn't either. So,
Thank you, Senator. And with that, I recognize Representative Dukes for a motion. I got you, I think. All right.
We move do pass.
We've got a move and a second. Any questions? All in favor? Let it know by saying aye. Aye. Any noes? No. Very good.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much.
Is our next guest here, Senator Hill? Well, we did have some more speakers on that bill, but unless there's some reason they need to speak, and I didn't seem to think that there was based on our previous conversations. Would you like to speak on the bill? Okay.
That's a great lobby.
I really don't know what to do here. Has anybody in here got any contact with Representative Hill or? Well, let's do this rather than recess. Let's just adjourn, and then we'll reschedule that. It won't take us long, I don't think, and I think we have some more coming our way anyway. So we'll just adjourn today. And is anybody here today that was specifically for the senator's bill, that for or against? Yes. I guess the only reason I'm asking is to know: is it okay? Is it all right with you that you come back at a later date? Would it inconvenience you in any way? Well, I'd prefer that the senator be here to hear your comments if we're going to be talking about his bill. You come with a message? Okay. In that case, we'll just recess for about 10 minutes then. That'd be great. In that case, Senator Hill, we welcome you. I know you've been busy, and so we won't hold that against you. And Senate Bill 367, if you want to come present.
Appreciate y'all waiting for me. This is, you probably hear this all the time. This is a simple little bill, but this indeed is. It's for the. It's intended to help the city of Atlanta. They asked me to carry this because they intended to put the president of their city council on the ARC board, and they voted 15-0 to do so. And then there was a stipulation whereby he wasn't considered a member of the legislative body, and I disagree with that reading, and so we made the slight change so that he could be included and be a member of the ARC board, which fits the wishes of the city of Atlanta.
Well, I actually took the privilege to go sit down with legislative council and said, "What is this?" And because I had never heard of it either, and it's kind of odd that somebody wouldn't be considered part of the board. And so I understand your clarification. Sorry you're having issues with that. But does any other committee got any questions on this particular issue, this bill? I think our vice chair moved, and I'll have a second. Well, got a question. I'm sorry. Did you have a question, somebody? I do, being Representative Sims. We got a move in a second, but we have a question.
Yeah, if you will, if we can hold those movements just a second. I got to ask a question of this, and you're saying the presiding officer of a legislative body within a municipality or county government, is that what you're saying?
Within a municipality, in this case, just within a municipality. There's an opportunity, as the whole code were to read, if you had it all in front of you, sort of the parameters by which you can be appointed to the board. I said the ARC board, but that's specific to Atlanta. All of the planning community boards around the state, so there's 12. But so this would affect all of cities and counties. It's just that it doesn't normally affect them as it's written. Does that make sense? In other words, most cities and counties don't have this setup whereby you have city council members and then a citywide elected president of the council, and a mayor, because a mayor is already one of these 5, or one of these however many there are. I might have confused the issue more than.
No, sir, I understand.
Okay, good.
There's some issues though that I'm for you, Bill. I just want you to know that this does affect other areas of the state, not just Atlanta. And sometimes the presiding officer could be considered somebody else or somebody that may not even be elected. I have to let you know that because there are some areas of the state that have appointed folks that are presiding
over the legislative body.
Yes. There are areas. There are areas that have unincorporated city, county governments, unincorporated areas of the state. In fact, there's 3 counties in this state that have unincorporated cities that are the county seat. I know that sounds kind of weird, but it is. I can tell you which ones they are, but even Evans, Georgia is unincorporated. I know that sounds, again, Eccles County has one down there, and that's Statenville. They're not even incorporated. So I don't know how it would affect them, but it doesn't really matter. They do have like RDC boards and different things that they're required to have somebody on, and I don't know how this would go there, but it's all right. I mean, I'm for you, Bill. I just want you to know that you could have some drawback somewhere along the way. I don't know. Once we pass it, you've gotten by. It looks like you've gotten by the Municipal Association and the ACCG. Maybe you've gotten out of the whack. But if they find out about it, I don't know what they're going to do when it gets on the floor.
Well, I will say I have not heard any opposition, but something that may give your concern some ease is that this language is permissive. It's not striking anyone out. So in other words, all those members that are elected, maybe their friends, or their city council colleagues will elect them. But
we have a lot of disenchanted folks, if you will, within city and county governments. They get real ill about most and splost, and then they get real cramped up about who's on what board and where and how this money's spent. And unless you've been around, I know you haven't been around as long as I have, but I know that if ACCG and GMA don't see this before we get on, you're a lucky man. Okay.
Okay. I'm sure you're right. They'll come get me if there's a problem.
You're very lucky if they don't.
And our vice chair has asked the question next, but no one else has signed up to speak. Is there supposed to be on this bill? Okay, I just need you to actually sign up, if you will. Okay. And our vice chair?
Senator Hill, have you talked to ACCG about this?
I don't think I've reached out to them proactively, but Rufus, maybe you can help me with that. Have we talked to those folks?
Sure.
I mean, and Rufus, I guess my question on this was I got stopped on the road line this morning about it from ACCG, and the only concerns that they expressed was that so you could mess with the whole code if you started getting amendments or whatever. That's why they seem to be fairly good with it.
Mr. Vice Chair, 2 things to address Representative Sims' question. This is applicable to the composition of membership of metropolitan area planning and development commissions, and so this specifically was related. Yes, the code section 5884. And it
only affects the metropolitan area.
Affects the metropolitan area. I'm giving to you verbatim. Membership of metropolitan area planning and development commissions. Okay. And then to your question, Mr. Chair, I've had conversations with representative from ARC, conversation with GMA. I talked to Marcy and the folks about it, and I also talked to the ACCG people. They were all okay with they were neutral on it. They weren't supportive or against it, as long as someone didn't try to open up the code and play around with it. But in its current form, there's no opposition from any of those groups or organizations.
Yeah, I think that's an extremely fair statement. I've talked with ARC and ACCG. GMA has not hit me up on it, but they all seem to be neutral. Everything seemed to be fine as long as the code was not opened up.
As long as the code is not open.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take any other questions.
Senator, are you completed with your, there's no more questions for you, Rufus? You want to, you're done?
That covers the extent of
Great.
questions I can answer.
Any other questions for? All right, then we'll ask, we now have Mr. Haggard signed up to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Scott Haggard with the Atlanta Regional Commission. I think Mr. Montgomery covered pretty much everything I was going to say, but just to clarify, this code section does only deal with the Metropolitan Area Planning and Development Commission, which is essentially just the ARC. So it would not affect the other areas around the state. And we have no problem with the bill. We're fine with it. We want to support City of Atlanta, which is one of our member jurisdictions, and we're happy to see the bill move.
Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chair, if there's no more questions or discussion or whatever, if at this time if it's appropriate, I'll move that the bill do pass.
I think we have a move and a second, and so really it comes to this point. Is any other discussion, questions? And you were actually the one that made a move the first time.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So good he had to move twice.
Yeah. I did get a little ahead of myself, but all in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much. Anything else we can do for you, let us know. Appreciate y'all coming and being patient.